Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. The Mandalorian Season 3 has been teasing Grand Admiral Thrawn, so we'll explain what's going on. We've gotten Easter eggs for him in previous seasons, and obviously he was a big character during Star Wars Rebels. They're bringing him back in a really big way during the events of The Mandalorian, the Ahsoka series. So we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. I will be doing videos for the Ahsoka series as well. We'll get another trailer for that pretty soon. Thrawn will be a much bigger character during that than he is during The Mandalorian Season 3.
Where is your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Currently, during the events of The Mandalorian Season 3, Grand Admiral Thrawn has already returned to the known galaxy after being lost in the unknown regions since about a year before the events of A New Hope at the end of Star Wars Rebels, like right before A New Hope. Ezra Bridger had used the ghost ship to summon a pod of Purrgils, which we saw in The Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 1, the Space Whales, basically, to take his 7th fleet of Star Destroyers into the unknown regions, sidelining him for the events of the original trilogy, giving the Rebels the ability to come together in a more cohesive way and start the galactic civil war that you saw during the original trilogy, implying that had Thrawn not been sent to the unknown regions, the Rebels would not have been successful. Thrawn is one of the major characters from Star Wars Legends that Dave Filoni brought back into the canon during Star Wars Rebels, so most of his backstory was also made canon with that too. There have been a couple updates across the years in the new Thrawn novels, but for the most part, his original backstory is pretty similar to what it is in present day with the new canon. He comes from the Chiss race in this part of the unknown regions. His race was relatively small compared to the Empire and the New Republic, but the main advantage they had up to the rise of the Empire was that because they've been in the unknown regions, an unmapped part of space, they've been relatively hidden from the rest of the galaxy and been allowed to develop in relative peace. Now, they still had their own problems. There's still a lot of threats in the unknown regions. It's just that it wasn't nearly on the scale that you saw between the Empire and the New Republic. During the events of the prequels, the Emperor learned about the Chiss, and when he tried to make them join the Empire, like we're leading up to the events of Revenge of the Sith here, the period right after the rise of the Empire, he wanted to exploit the Chiss the same way that he did with every other race in the galaxy, just using them to his own ends, just using up all their resources, the same way that he tried to do with the Mandalorians. So much earlier in the timeline when this is happening, a young Thrawn, most brilliant military commander in the history of the galaxy, started playing four-dimensional chess with the Emperor, sacrificed himself for the most part, saying that he would join the Imperial Navy and serve him to the best of his abilities and give the Emperor access to the maps of the unknown regions that he didn't have access to, like the New Republic, even the Jedi didn't have maps of a lot of the unknown regions, but the Chiss had already mapped large portions of it. So the Emperor agrees to his terms. The Empire largely leaves the Chiss race alone in exchange for Thrawn's service and all these maps of the unknown regions. Then through the early years after Revenge of the Sith, he rises quickly through the ranks of the Imperial Navy. He's a genius, so he runs circles around all the other Imperial officers. It impresses the Emperor and the other Imperial command enough that he gets his own fleet of Star Destroyers. They're called the 7th Fleet. They were meant to be this special extra fleet on top of the Empire's normal forces. Usually when you become an admiral in the Imperial Navy, they give you a fleet of Star Destroyers. But the thing is that most of the rest of the Empire hated Thrawn. They didn't want to have anything to do with him. Even Darth Vader hated Thrawn. The Emperor himself had a history of hating non-humans and didn't openly want to show a lot of favor to Thrawn just because it wasn't very popular. So for the most part, the Imperial Navy, the rest of the Empire, doesn't really think too much of Thrawn. They don't consider him a big deal. But the Emperor does know how good he is and how valuable he is, so he largely has Thrawn running stealth operations, stuff on the side, secret missions that he doesn't tell the rest of the Empire about. So he did want to use Thrawn as much as possible. Darth Vader had the weirdest of relationships with Thrawn because the Emperor eventually grew to value Thrawn as much as he did Vader, just because Darth Vader's big thing was eliminating all threats to his position in the Empire. He didn't even like the Emperor. They were always plotting against each other. And because Thrawn was so smart, he was one of the very few people inside the Empire that actually knew Darth Vader used to be Anakin Skywalker and would tease him about this all the time. He rarely showed emotion, unlike Darth Vader. So Thrawn didn't hate Darth Vader the way that Vader hated him, but he knew to be very careful of Vader. They worked together on a lot of missions when necessary, but otherwise avoided each other. During the events of Star Wars Rebels, Thrawn is mostly busy hunting down the early versions of the Rebel Alliance as it starts to come together. This is right around the beginning of the events of Andor. The Rebels had actually started to come together during that in a more organized way, whereas before they were meant to be a bunch of disparate cells across the galaxy, all kind of doing their own thing, loosely connected through Luthen's character. We'll start to see the Rebels come together in a more organized way during Andor Season 2, which will jump forward in the timeline way faster. Thrawn's other mission during this early period, like right before A New Hope, before he disappears in the unknown regions, was developing the TIE Defenders, which is another big thing that Dave Filoni pulled out of the Legends canon. Thrawn is still like the biggest thing that he's pulled out of the canon so far. We'll see if he ever brings Mara Jade back into the canon. That'd be really cool. She was also a big part of the Heir to the Empire storyline. If you played the classic Star Wars TIE Defender video game back in the day on DOS,
are to prevent Zarin's forces from stripping the research platform where he led development of the TIE Defender.
TIE Defenders were introduced during that, then later, Dave Filoni brought them back into the canon on Rebels, like a lot of other things he's brought back. During the events of Rebels, Thrawn started using Lothal, Ezra Bridger's homeworld, to build the TIE Defenders. That's why they have this final battle there at the end of Rebels with the Purgles, the space whales. Ezra Bridger used the Ghost to summon the Purgles. They live in hyperspace, they can navigate it naturally. They pull Thrawn's 7th fleet of Star Destroyers, including his main Star Destroyer, the Chimera, into the unknown regions. It was implied the area of space that they took them to wasn't part of the unknown regions that Thrawn already had secret maps of. In that event, basically sidelines Thrawn's entire 7th fleet for the events of the original trilogy, like I said, allowing the rebels to finish coming together, destroy the TIE Defender factories. It implies they wouldn't have been able to defeat the Empire during the original trilogy had Thrawn not been taken to the unknown regions. Then, like right after this event, the events of Andor start happening. So during Andor Season 1, Thrawn, the 7th Fleet, were believed to have been lost, just disappeared in the unknown regions. Most of the Empire, even the Emperor himself, had no idea what happened. Ahsoka Tano, Sabine Wren vow to find Ezra and bring him back. At the end of Star Wars Rebels, there's another time jump to right after the destruction of the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi. You see Sabine reunite with Ahsoka and head off to continue their search for Ezra Bridger. During the Ahsoka trailer last year, like the live-action Ahsoka episodes, they had a live-action version of Sabine touching the mural just like this. And Dave Filoni said the live-action Ahsoka series will kind of serve like a sequel to the events of Rebels, picking up where it left off, but taking place around the same time where The Mandalorian Season 3 is happening. So I think we all believe that Ahsoka is going to cameo during The Mandalorian Season 3, and by the end of her episodes, or her storyline during The Mandalorian Season 3, they'll set up the beginning of the Ahsoka series. As of The Mandalorian Season 2, Ahsoka learned that Thrawn had returned from the unknown regions at some point after Return of the Jedi when she encountered his former aide, Morgan Elsbeth, on the Caladan planet in the Outer Rim. She verbally asked where Thrawn is because she knew that Elsbeth had been in contact with Thrawn again since his return because the HK droids, which are also now canon again, had Thrawn's insignia of the 7th Fleet on them. HK droids had originally been from the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic game. So at some point around Season 1, maybe just before the events of Season 1, Thrawn had been able to map the unknown regions where he was stuck, use those to get back to the Outer Rim where he'd started to rebuild his forces and the Empire just in general with the help of Moff Gideon. And they're adapting a live-action version of the Heir to the Empire Thrawn trilogy. Couple characters a little bit different, couple of the plot details going to be a little bit different, but during that story, Thrawn uses a clone Jedi Master to strengthen his forces. He also eventually tries to use a clone of Luke Skywalker. Right now, they're trying to do that with Grogu. Also during that story, Thrawn was trying to find a lost fleet of battleships that would give him extra power to defeat the New Republic. Right now, it seems like Thrawn is doing all those things with Moff Gideon's help, slowly rebuilding his forces, preparing to strike the New Republic, while also trying to create ultra-powerful, Force-sensitive clone troopers with Grogu, making him nearly invincible. Dave Filoni also just introduced another major Easter egg for the Heir to the Empire story during the Bad Batch episodes, which take place way earlier in the timeline, like right after Revenge of the Sith. He just recanonized Mount Tantiss on Bad Batch. They're using that as the Emperor's secret base where he was developing his new cloning program, more Grogu Force-sensitive clones. During the original Heir to the Empire storyline, Mount Tantiss was just one of the secret bases the Emperor had where he kept really dangerous Force artifacts or things that he didn't want other people to find or other secret weapons. It's also where he kept Luke Skywalker's severed hand that they used to clone Luke Skywalker during that trilogy. So just a lot of Force-sensitive cloning experiments going on at Mount Tantiss, both in Legends and now in the new canon as well, in the new shows. And when we start talking about the relationship between Moff Gideon and Grand Admiral Thrawn, it's a little bit like Thrawn's relationship with Grand Moff Tarkin during the Legends. The way the hierarchy of power in the Empire worked is that Moffs were like the space governors, like they represented the political arm of the Empire. A Moff is the governor of a sector of space which contain many different systems, so remember, Moff Gideon, he's supposed to be in charge of an entire sector, very powerful. On top of that, Grand Moff Tarkin was like the governor of an over-sector of space which contained a bunch of sectors. And becoming a Grand Admiral doesn't make you more powerful than a Grand Moff necessarily, they're kind of separate. Under normal circumstances, Grand Moff Tarkin would have had more authority than Thrawn because the military works for the government, technically, and Tarkin was the arm of the Imperial government in most of the galaxy. So normally he'd be the one telling Thrawn what missions to go on, with the exception that Thrawn was sort of like a secret member of the military that the Emperor personally gave missions to. So Thrawn had a level of autonomy within the Imperial Navy that most of the other commanders didn't. So I think they'll get into this relationship between Moff Gideon and Thrawn eventually through all these other spin-off series in the future Mandalorian seasons, where both of them think that they're the one in charge of the remnants of the Empire. Like, Thrawn is the genius with this grand plan, but Moff Gideon considers himself to be the one in charge of everything because he's a Moff. And by the end of Ahsoka's cameo scene or episodes during The Mandalorian Season 3, she'll have learned where Thrawn is, and we'll get a teaser for the 7th Fleet in the Chimera Star Destroyer, his main Star Destroyer. Normally, I would assume they'd use the original voiceover actor for the live-action version, like they did with Bo-Katan, being Katie Sackhoff again. But Lars Mikkelsen, who's the original voice actor for Thrawn, made it sound like he hasn't been contacted yet. I think that's a lie. I think he's just pretending that Star Wars has not reached out to him. It probably will wind up being him. Most of you remember him from Sherlock. He was an amazing actor. He's been on a bunch of different stuff. And I think we'll get a teaser for Thrawn at the end of The Mandalorian, and he'll become a much bigger character during the Ahsoka series just because so much of her storyline seems like it's connected with Thrawn and Ezra Bridger, who they have already cast with a live-action actor. I don't know if he's going to cameo during The Mandalorian Season 3 or if Sabine Wren is going to show up in The Mandalorian Season 3. But Dave Filoni helped write 3 episodes of The Mandalorian Season 3, so I'm assuming Ahsoka will be part of one of those 3 episodes, if not more than one. I'll do more bonus videos for Thrawn as we get more Easter eggs and teasers during future Mandalorian episodes. If you have any big questions too, leave them in the comments below. My full Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 3 video will post next. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everyone click here for that Episode 3 video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that. And click here for all my other Mandalorian Season 3 videos. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and this is The Way.